Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. I was standing in a dark corner of the ballroom, watching a couple swaying on the dance floor. Their eyes were locked on each other. The woman's chest rose and fell as her partner pulled her even closer than one might think, her petite body pressed against his large body. They were elegant in their movements. He moved with the grace of an athlete, and she followed his example well. All eyes were on them. There was an emotional connection between them, perhaps not love, but this connection was stronger than friendship. Her honey blonde hair swayed with the tenderness of the tide, swaying as she pressed her whole body against him. Not that she had much choice. She was held tightly by a handsome man. I would envy their connection if this woman hadn't been my wife for 11 years, in the arms of her boss. Instead, I felt anger and humiliation. It wasn't the first time we attended her company's annual awards and appreciation banquet, and everyone who worked at the company knew that she was my wife. I saw people looking for me while we were all watching the play being played out in front of us. They were all waiting for the explosion. After 3 dances, they left the dance floor together, joining other colleagues at a round table in the center of the room. I watched as she looked at him with those crazy eyes that were once only mine. It's not like I've seen them recently, but it didn't lessen the disgust that was growing in me. The only thing that came to mind was, it won't be long now. This kettle was going to boil soon. I just needed to hold on a little longer. I struggled to reconcile my fear, hatred, and resentment of this scene with the love, respect, and trust I once had for my beautiful wife. This is a battle that I was losing, no matter how hard I tried to overcome these feelings. But now I was falling into despair and self-pity. I lowered my head in defeat. I've been working so hard in recent months to try to get her back, to repair the damage done to our marriage. I had date nights, I did my chores, turned off the TV, and tried to start a conversation, only for her to leave. I left flowers, notes, and postcards with loving feelings, just to find them in the trash. I sent flowers to her at work and didn't even hear if she got them or not. What else can I do now but wait? I thought to myself. I put those thoughts out of my mind as I returned to the temporary bar in the corner of the room and stood behind Marianne, one of Kelsey's longtime work friends. "Are you having fun somehow?" I asked, trying to look nonchalant. "I always like these annual parties. Harold likes free drinks," she replied. I smiled and nodded, picking up my empty glass. "Me too. Hey, I haven't seen Jason's wife today. Where is she?" I hoped my tension wasn't noticeable. She always dresses so elegantly, and it's nice to chat with her. "Oh, didn't Kels mention it?" Jason handed her the divorce papers today. I assume she was neglecting her marital duties. I found Marianne just at that stage of intoxication when she didn't think too much about her words. I was not disappointed with the results. "No, I think not, because it's Friday night and all that. We came here right after I got back from work, and we didn't have a chance to gossip. I wasn't just lying, it was a direct lie. We took the afternoon off to go home and get ready for the evening. She had plenty of time to mention it, but she chose not to. I refilled my Captain and Diet, picked up a glass of white wine for Kelsey, and headed over to the table where she and Jason were standing. Neither of them noticed my approach. They were too engrossed in each other. "Kels, I brought you a glass of wine." I handed her the glass. She jumped a little when I spoke. "Oh, you scared me," she squeaked and accepted the glass. The others became more and more uncomfortable the longer we stood there. Most of them found something surprisingly interesting on a stained tablecloth or at the other end of the room and didn't look directly at me. Others stared at me, probably wondering what I was thinking and how blind I could be. A younger man, about 25 years old, even grinned as he watched me look at the table. We met eyes. He held on for a couple of seconds, then his grin disappeared, and he also found the tablecloth interesting. We were approaching 1 o'clock in the morning, and many guests had already left the hotel hall heading home. But I could tell that Kelsey wasn't ready to break away from her dance partner. "We should probably go home, honey. I still have to take the babysitter home, and we promised her we wouldn't be later than 2 tonight," I said, realizing I was interrupting her time with Jason. "Yes, good. I think we should go. I'll see you on Monday." She smiled. There was relief on all sides that the awkwardness was almost over. "Jason, it was good to see you." I held out my hand and he shook it. He was a strong man and did his best to demonstrate this with his strong grip. He was 3 inches taller than my 6 feet, but I outweighed him by about 15 pounds. I had a small pouch on my stomach. I pressed a little harder than usual, looking straight into his eyes and seeing in them a reflection of deception and complacency. Finally, he stopped shaking and wished us good night. I waved to the others as we walked out of the room to the car. We didn't talk on the way home, although she had a smile that made her look radiant. As soon as we got home, Kelsey went to check on Caitlin, our 9-year-old daughter, and I paid Brittany and got ready to take her home. When I returned, I went into the bedroom and found Kelsey already in bed and asleep. I checked on Caitlin, went to the bathroom, and went to sleep in the spare room. I could hardly remember the last time we were together. My eyes closed, and the last thing I saw was the ceiling as I fell into a restless sleep while going through my internal checklist for tomorrow. I got up early on Saturday morning. Caitlin was already in the living room watching her shows, and I gave her a little wave, stopping at the door. "Have you had breakfast yet?" "Yeah," she said, waving a milk-soaked spoon in the air, splashing drops of milk on the carpet. "Okay, calm down. Mom is still asleep and I need to work in my office. Okay?" "Okay, Dad," she said too loudly, and I grinned. At about 8:30 a.m., I called my lawyer on my cell phone, knowing that he was working at home on Saturday morning. "Good morning, Bill. This is Matthew Franks." "Good morning, Matt. I suppose it's not a happy call," he answered, already knowing the answer. "That's right. It's time to put the plan into action. I found out that Jason served his wife yesterday. Do we know if Kels has already met with a lawyer?" "I don't think so, but I'll call the scumbag and make sure. I will meet you in half an hour at the coffee shop. Ask you to sign and date the forms together with my assistant for notarization. We will submit the documents first thing on Monday morning and serve her at lunch." "Sounds good to me. See you soon." I came to the coffee shop early. Smiling faintly at the cutie behind the counter, I picked up my order and found a comfortable chair next to the fireplace. My mind was wandering. I never thought that I would divorce the only true love in my life. It's hard to choose the exact moment when you realize that your comfortable life is coming to an end, but you can roughly decide. It was a traffic ticket. You know, one of those automatic camera fixes when running a red light. When you run a red light and they take a picture of the driver, the license plate of the car along with the date and timestamp. That's all. I saw the fine when I received the mail. I laughed and immediately realized it was Kelsey. She always turned on her headlights when she was in a hurry. I opened it, deciding that I would just cry and not say a word. Nothing good could have happened if she had come face to face with it. The driver's photo showed Kelsey, with a man's shoulder and arm to her right. I couldn't see his face, but I knew who it was. Nothing special. She could have been at lunch or going to a meeting. It could have been anything. I checked the date and time, March 5th. I didn't like something about it. It wasn't that long ago I started looking through my phone. I found our text messages on the 5th. Kelsey at 11:19. "I'll stop by Mary's after work to pick up Kate's clothes." I remember thinking that there was nothing unusual about this. Mary's daughter was a couple of years older and we received nice gifts from them, although I thought Mary usually brought them to work. But still, my radar didn't beep. Matt at 12:03. "Don't worry, do you want me to cook dinner?" Kelsey at 12:10. "Yes." Matt at 12:11. "What time should I expect you?" Kelsey at 12:12. "Well, we could chat for a minute." Matt at 12:42. "Okay, have fun." Kelsey at 2:10. "Thanks, we'll do it." That bitch, I thought, checking the intersection on Google Maps. It was on the opposite side of the city from where Mary lived. But it can still be innocent, right? But then I started putting the pieces together. Since the end of November, Kelsey has been restrained. I noticed that all the holidays we quarreled over little things. By January, she no longer liked holding my hand while shopping or walking. Our common topics of conversation began to be limited to work or Caitlin. We didn't talk about our dreams anymore. We didn't talk about family vacations or our future. I've had a trust fund since I was little. My great-grandfather bought a lot of undeveloped land in the Pacific Northwest. Then, when the local town grew, he sold the plots of land back to the town. When he died, I benefited from these purchases, and several $100,000 went to this fund. It grew again when my grandfather died, allowing the contribution to grow again. I never needed to go into this, as my family lived on self-sufficiency. The balance has stabilized and even grown slightly, as it was created in such a way as to accumulate interest. After my father's death, when my mother had already died, I inherited all the property. I just put his trust in mine. With the accumulated wealth, the three of us were close to settling down for life, But Kelsey and I continued to work and build up our capital in preparation for retirement. I got a prenup to protect the foundation when Kelsey and I got married. Every few years, we updated the prenuptial agreement and our wills. One of the points that always remained unchanged was the standard provision on divorce. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. We added a clause about Caitlin getting an education in the event of my death or if we get divorced. Of course, there were provisions regarding the mechanism and circumstances of my death. Obviously, Kelsey would not have seen anything if she had had a hand in my demise. Because of this, I have had access to a family lawyer and accounting services for many years. I contacted my lawyer and found out the name of the best local divorce lawyer. I made an appointment with him by the end of the week to see my options. Since we had a solid prenuptial agreement, he wasn't worried about any financial problems. I explained that I was not ready for any decisive action at the moment. I just wanted to know what steps to take next. Well, Matt, we could ask a private investigator to look into what's going on and see if there's anything to worry about. Unfortunately, all my investigators are busy right now. It will be several weeks before they can devote any time to your case. I don't want to wait. I'm already losing sleep over this. Are there any other options? Well, there is one. He's trying to start over, but few people really trust him. We call him Larry the Scoundrel. Bill went on to explain, he's a former police officer who was fired because of complaints and some questionable activity. He could start right now, but I do not know if I would recommend a long-term relationship with him. Why do you call him a scoundrel? I asked, laughing. I want everything to be legal, so if we find something, we will be on solid ground if we have to move forward. It's okay. He's legal. He has a habit of receiving information such as detailed photos and videos, as well as emails and phone conversations, which, let's say, go through a fine line of permissibility in court. But I was told that what he finds is somehow convincing proof of infidelity. Okay, as long as it's legal. We could always pay him off and switch to a more respected private investigator in a couple of weeks. I paused. Do you think he can start today? I'll call him and find out. I'll be your go, between here and the office. I'll let you know today. Sounds good, thanks. I filled out a bunch of documents for both the lawyer and the scoundrel, connected him with my accountant, and left a retainer from my personal account. Kelsey didn't have access to it, so she didn't know what I was doing. I didn't want to scare her, especially if I was wrong and it was just a difficult period in our marriage. While this was happening, I decided to try to rebuild my relationship with my wife. My life experience has told me that people don't just change and do uncharacteristic things if there is no catalyst. Since I didn't know what it was for my wife, and I didn't know if we had passed the point of no return, I decided to make sure that I take care of the business as a husband. I took my game into my own hands and did everything possible to make her feel loved and appreciated as an equal partner in our relationship. I doted on her and set myself the goal of becoming a husband who was the envy of all her friends. I was rejected at every turn, and it became obvious that we had already passed the point of no return. One Thursday afternoon, I was invited to my Bill's office to get what the scoundrel had found. I was shown hours-long footage of them meeting, making love and playing happy couple. There were photos, recordings of phone calls, and private email messages. I was both impressed and outraged by the scoundrel, but agreed that his nickname was well-deserved. I was devastated. I never would have thought that she could have had an affair with Jason Stanton. I think I could understand what attracted Jason. He was tall, handsome, and well-built. He was educated and was on an upward trajectory both in his work and in his personal life. He took over Kelsey's department about a year ago. As his personal assistant, Kelsey worked closely with Jason, and this gave him an endless amount of time to get to know and enter Kelsey's life. Jason was a baseball star in college, and the only thing that prevented him from going to graduate school was a shoulder injury in his senior year. I mean, who wouldn't be impressed by this guy? I just never thought Kelsey would let him come between us. It was all too overwhelming. I couldn't breathe. My chest constricted, my vision blurred, and I felt like I was about to lose consciousness. I pushed my chair back, put my head between my knees, and tried to focus on my breathing. I inhale, exhale, inhale, and exhale until my head clears up. The feeling of loss and emptiness cannot be described. I have just lost my best friend, my confidant, my lover, and the mother of my child. At that moment, I didn't see a way out of it, and then it got even worse. He played the recording he made the day before, and that's why he wanted to bring us all together. Kelsey. Really? You're low. Do you love me? I could hear the excitement in her voice. Jason. Yes, my dear, you are the most perfect woman. I love you, and I want us to be a family. Kelsey. You mean you, me, and Caitlin? Jason. Of course. Kelsey. What about Matt and, Shannon? Jason. We'll divorce them. You'll get Caitlin, and we'll live like a happy family. There was a pause in the conversation. I assumed that Kelsey was digesting the bomb that her lover had just dropped on her. You really love me. Isn't that right, Kels? Kelsey. Yes, of course it is. I never really thought about leaving Matt, that's all. Jason. Well, think about it a little bit. He will never be able to give you what I can. You will be a beauty at every ball. You will become a part of high society. You'll be able to see places and things that a loser would never be able to afford. I could hear the contempt in his voice and imagined the look on his face when he spoke. Kelsey. It will kill him if he loses Kate. We are his world. Jason. I'm going to be 10 times the best father this loser could ever be. In a year, she won't even want to go and see him. Kelsey. Why do you hate him so much? What did he do to you? There was a note of concern in her voice. To be honest, I wanted to know too. Jason. He doesn't deserve you, Kels. This loser has no ambition and no desire to be anything more than he is today, a drone making someone else rich. Kelsey. You know he's the factory manager, right? His factory employs 400 people and they have the highest production rates and the largest revenue per square foot of all the factories. I was a little proud that Kelsey knew this, although I would have preferred this conversation to take place in their dining room rather than in a hotel room. Jason. He's a weakling, a weak beta tester who didn't have the drive or ambition in school, and he didn't even get a Master of Business Administration degree. He has completed his task, dear. Kelsey. Jason. Don't ever think that you're so much better than Matt. He's not a weakling. You don't know anything about his youth? He's been hanging out with some bad guys and is very good with guns. He almost went down the wrong path himself until he decided to go to school. That's why he didn't go to college for several years after high school. Now it sounded like she was bragging. Kelsey. He's stronger and more resilient than you think. Please promise me that you won't run into him physically. I wouldn't want any of you to get hurt. He's for Kate and you're for me. But I'm not in love with him anymore. I wish that was the case, but you replaced him as my man, my love. She paused as if thinking, how will it work and when? Jason, we will divorce them at the same time. I need to put a few things in order before I serve Shannon. But with her psychiatric problems and the fact that we haven't had a bed for a year, it won't be difficult. I'll split it 50-50, she's unlikely to mind. Kelsey. Okay, but you have to apply for Shannon before I even see a lawyer. She was tough. I guessed that she wanted to be safe and not lose her comfortable life at the moment, even for the sake of her true love, her man. Jason. All right, now come here, woman. I asked that the recording be turned off at this point. I no longer needed to listen. I looked at Bill and asked, how do I deal with this? You hit first, Matt. But what if she changes her mind? They rarely do that, Mr. Franks. I'm afraid they've gotten to the point where nothing you do or say will make them stop or repent. I got a good look at the scoundrel for the first time. He was over 30, he was fit, athletic, and his suit fit him well, not at all how I imagined it. He was respectful and probably right, I thought. I began to see him as Larry, not a scoundrel. I got the feeling that this guy was really on my side. Even if I was paying, he was not indifferent and disgusted by what he saw and heard from these two. And would you want her after what you know now? Larry added. You're probably right, Larry. Turning to Bill. Bill, give me a day or two to make a decision and I'll call you, okay? That sounds good, Matt. Can I run the document structure and we can add details later or stop the whole thing if needed? Yes, let's do this. Larry followed me and handed me his business card. This is my personal number, Mr. Franks, in case you ever need me. Please, Larry, call me Matt. Thank you. Matt, I know some people who could help you get revenge if you decide to go down this path. I mean, they don't just call me Larry the Scoundrel. He declared with a smile. Laughing, I said, glad to meet Larry. I'll let you know if I need any help. Seriously, though, thanks for the offer. I don't think I could do that to Kels, but I like to know that I have a friend if I decide to go down this path. Larry smiled at me and waved as he headed for his car. I've been thinking about my choice all weekend. I could barely focus on anything else. And it seems Kelsey didn't even notice that I was deciding the fate of our family. It occurred to me that she had already decided it for all of us. I struggled with all the feelings of doubt, anger, fear, and disappointment. The humiliation and loss of my perceived masculinity was what hurt the most. My identity was my job and my family. Who would I be without my family? I was worried about Caitlin and how she would move on to the next chapter. I was annoyed by the idea that this arrogant bastard was going to raise my daughter. I even had pictures of him walking my daughter down the aisle at her wedding. My emotions and thoughts were everywhere. No matter how much booze I poured on them, I didn't get any clarity until Sunday morning. Sitting on the back porch with a hell of a headache, it occurred to me that this was probably going to happen no matter how hard I fought it. I've already lost my wife. I've seen the contempt in her eyes. I've already lost my family. All that mattered now was on whose terms and on what terms I would lose everything. Then the old saying struck me. Lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Well, I wasn't going to get out of the way and I wasn't ready to follow these scammers. So I had only one choice to lead. I called Bill on Monday morning. Bill, this is Matt Franks. Good morning, Matt. Are you any closer to a decision? Yes. I would like you to fill out all the necessary documents, adding only the legal photos that Larry received. Divide it all 50-50. I paused. Do you want to sell the house? Yes, we took out a low-interest loan from my trust fund to buy it, so we've been paying ourselves all this time. We will split any capital we receive, but I will repay the full amount of the loan and the interest we have paid over the years. In addition, please add 200,000 kells from my trust. Consider it payment for services rendered. She could have been more friendly if she had known that she would not come out of this completely broke. I want to get primary custody of Kate. I know it won't be easy, but maybe Larry can find some dirt on our boy Jason that will make him look less like a suitable father for a young girl. I heard that he was a first-class fraternity member in college. Maybe he got a little carried away with some of his victories. Put Larry on him, please. I have a backup plan for Kate. If we don't get primary custody, please email me the most generous joint custody plan you've ever heard of. I stopped for a second so Bill could catch up with me. Besides, I want to sue Jason for alienation of love and affection, and find a way to involve his wife Shannon in this mess. I want her to be aware of what's going on, in full compliance with the law. And speaking of her, please create and prepare another adultery divorce scheme for her. I'll pay for it. I think she should get what she's owed. We can serve them both in the exclusion room, but you should know that this will not lead anywhere. I will also need to get her to sign a contract with me. I can start filling out forms, but without her consent or information, I can't do anything else, Bill explained. I get it. I just want to shake the tree a little bit, and since you're up to it, I want to sue Kelsey's company for letting her sleep with her boss. I'm pretty sure there's no morality clause in their leadership, but it should be questionable for any company to have this happen under their supervision. He is her immediate superior. I know it's probably not going anywhere, but again, let's shake this tree and see what falls out. Okay, Matt, it's going to be expensive, and then it's going to go up. You're talking about a lot of man-hours, and if it's challenged, even more. I understand it's just money, but I need to make sure these two don't make more profit than they're owed. And as my dad used to say, whenever you bring in a lawyer, you're just discussing how much it's going to cost. Bill was laughing at my snide comment about lawyers when he said, "We will say that your dad was a smart man. You know you don't have to give her any money from your trust. Your marriage contract is sealed." I know, Bill, but I've been thinking about it all weekend, and I've decided that if I don't leave her without funds, she might be more willing to agree to my demands, and she kind of deserves it. She worked hard and helped me. We both built our nest for old age. I thought it might give her an advantage over Jason, so when she's alone, she won't have to rely on him so much. She deserves more, but there's no way in the world I'm going to give that cheating bastard Jason more than he's already taken away from me in my life. I mean it. My wife should be enough. I felt furious when I spoke, just thinking about how Jason had taken over the life that should have been mine. I've always considered myself fair in my relationships and wanted to make sure I treated Kelsey fairly, even if she didn't return the favor. My consolation was that I was sure that Caitlin would approve of my actions later, when she realized how our family had broken up. One last thing, Bill. Don't apply yet. I want everything to be done and ready to launch. I want to wait for her to make the first move. It will give me more time with Kate at our family home. I know there will come a time when I need to pull the trigger, but I want it to be at the last moment when I can't put up with it anymore. Understood. We can leave everything undated and notarized until you are ready. I work on Saturday mornings from home, so you can call me on weekends. We won't be able to file the paperwork until Monday morning anyway, but I can ask someone to stand at the door when they open and serve them the same day. Okay, that's the plan. We said goodbye. I pulled Larry's business card out of my pocket and dialed the number. Larry, Matt Franks. How are you? I'm fine, he replied. Are you ready for some dirty fun? Well, sort of. But I want you to wait for my word, okay? No problem, Matt. What are we talking about? Can we meet in person? Yes, give me an hour. Sounds good, I replied. I was already waiting when he pulled into the parking lot. He took some coffee and had a snack and then sat down across from me. I want to collect this unpleasant file, photos, videos, recordings, everything that is. Do we need to find a way to anonymously send this to Shannon Stanton, maybe by email? No problem. I know a guy who works on the dark web, Larry said. Is that all? How about posting a video on an adult website or sending an unpleasant one to Kelsey's parents or colleagues? God, he's mean, I thought. No, Kels will have to stay in town anyway. I wouldn't want her to be so humiliated that she left town with Kate. And I still love that stupid fool, even if she doesn't love me anymore. I shoved an envelope with $5,000 in cash across the table. This should help get you started, but let me know if you need more. Larry took the money and looked at me. $3,000 would do it. He may be mean, but at least he's honest. Keep the rest as an advance. I may need your expertise later. Don't forget to sit in the folder until I call you. I want to catch them off guard, and I have reasons to let them make the first move. Oh, we also need to get an idea of what problems his wife has. Her medical history may affect everything that we will solve later. Is it possible? Yes, and Bill asked you to find out about Jason's college years? I'm looking for something that I can use against them if we fight for custody. He nodded his head again and made a couple of notes in his notebook. We finished our coffee and chatted about his career as a policeman and people we might know. We finished, shook hands, and went our separate ways. That was 3 months ago. I came back to reality when Bill appeared, and then soon after his assistant and Larry. So it's time to go, Bill asked when everyone was seated. Yes, it looks like it. Larry, do we know if Kels has been to a lawyer yet? As far as I know, no. I quickly scanned her email after Bill's call and didn't see anything. I'll take a closer look today and I'll know by Monday morning. I didn't hear that, Bill exclaimed, plugging his ears with his index fingers. I can't know these things, Larry. Larry smiled and nodded, giving me a sly wink. What about Jason? Is there any dirty laundry? I asked hopefully. Yes, he was investigated together with his brotherhood. Something to do with illegal date rape substances and some underage girls at parties. I got copies of everything and have already given them to Bill. Bill looked up, nodded in confirmation, and added, I have them if we need them for a custody hearing. After taking out the documents we had been working on for the last few months, he showed me where to sign. When I signed, Bill's assistant notarized it. I turned to the group. Larry, can you find out who Shannon Stanton hired as her lawyer? And let Bill know. Then Bill, if he's worth anything, could you share our legal file with him? What if he's not a decent lawyer? Bill asked. Then we'll get you in touch with Shannon somehow, but I'd rather we did it right. Larry, I don't think we need to send her stuff. Larry nodded, sipping his coffee, and Bill looked at both of us. Bill, can I pick up the documents on Monday afternoon? First, I'll give Kels the documents myself and let her know what's going on. And then can you officially serve her on Tuesday? Bill nodded understandingly and talked to his assistant about getting the server ready for Tuesday. Besides, I'd like Jason and their company to be served on Tuesday afternoon. I think we can start contacting Shannon, as she will be in the loop soon. Bill, you can share the file with Shannon's lawyer on Monday afternoon, as long as he doesn't ruin my conversation with Kels on Monday night. I leaned back in my chair and sighed. Everything should be in full swing by Wednesday. Matt, have you thought about where Kelsey is going to sleep on Monday night? Bill asked. Just now. Any problems with her staying in the house for a few days? Not until you get a restraining order and she agrees. I wouldn't sleep with her. Legally, I don't think it's a problem, but it might be uncomfortable for you. I would be concerned about what a less scrupulous lawyer would do with this information, Bill added. Okay, I'll give her a week to find a place. We're not making love right now. I don't see a problem. Oh, you mean actually sleeping in the same bed? Oh, but our paperwork gives me temporary control of the house and Kate, right? Yes, until her lawyer files a motion and cancels it all, or until we all come to an agreement. I meant actually sleeping in the same bed. It just might give a strange atmosphere to the applications, Bill said. Don't worry, we're not sleeping together right now. Hey, Larry, what have you learned about Shannon's health? She struggled with depression and bipolar disorder for years. Apparently, the drugs killed her attraction, and Mr. Wonderful went looking for her. I don't think we want to know. How did you find out? Larry just smiled and shook his head, and Bill feigned shock. Bill, does this concern us in any way? I asked. No, not now. It may play a role later when we get to the custody part and find out who stays with whom and when. We can mention this as a condition in the final draft so that Caitlin will never be alone with him. Bill was busy taking notes on his iPad while he was talking. We chatted for a few more minutes and one by one interrupted our strategy session and continued our day. I felt a little depressed for the rest of the weekend. My duties, which I had to complete on Monday, weighed heavily on me. Kelsey didn't notice anything, and I didn't expect her to. On Sunday, I called my aunt and arranged for her to pick Caitlin up from school on Monday and leave her overnight so I could talk to Kelsey about some important family matters. They lived on a farm outside the city, and Kate loved playing with their dogs and feeding the animals. She's taking Caitlin to school on Tuesday, and I figured we'd break the news to Caitlin on Tuesday night. I informed Caitlin of these arrangements, and she was excited, if a little confused, about why she was being kept until Tuesday. I just explained it by saying that Mom and Dad needed some personal time to discuss everything. She reluctantly accepted it. I slept in the spare room, and again Kelsey didn't mention it. She breathed a sigh of relief when she saw me heading there before going to bed. I was lying there Sunday night, going through my checklist and rechecking my plan, and finally fell asleep sometime early in the morning. Early Monday morning, I called my vice president of operations and explained that I needed a week off. I also called my assistant and senior production manager to let them know any details they need to know while I'm gone. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I went into Bill's office and accidentally found Larry there. I saw a stack of papers on the table, and a flurry of activity in the office told me that everyone was busy. Matt, we filed the documents at the courthouse this morning, and here are Kelsey's documents, as you requested, and we agreed to officially file the documents at your house around 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Is that appropriate? Bill asked, handing me the envelopes. Yes, it should work. I'm going to persuade her to take a vacation for the rest of the week. I'll call you if that changes, I replied. Great. Good. Bill paused for a moment to collect his thoughts before continuing. Larry found Shannon's lawyer, and he's pretty good, so I sent him our files and he salivated. He's probably going to offer a counterclaim for adultery and a ton more of their assets than 50-50, and he promised not to do anything until morning. So it's all good. Okay, gentlemen, have we forgotten anything? I asked, a little depressed. It looks like Kelsey has an appointment with her lawyer next week, as far as I can tell from her calls and emails. And Matt, please let me know if you need any more help, okay? Larry asked cautiously, earning Bill another sharp look at what was going on. All right, I think we're fine, I replied, hoping I didn't have to get any dirtier than I already am. I think it's up to Kelsey and Jason now. I left Bill's office and texted Kelsey. Matt at 1:55. Kels, are you going to be home tonight at a decent time? Kelsey at 2:02. 5:30. Why? What happened? Matt at 2:04. Nothing, I was a little distracted this weekend and wanted to try to catch up a little bit tonight. I've arranged with Aunt Alex to pick Kate up tonight and leave her overnight. I think I'll bring dinner home. Do you have any wishes? Kelsey at 2:16. How sweet. Matt at 2:20. Done, I'll cook dinner at 5:30. I felt like a complete jerk setting her up like that, but lately it hasn't been uncommon for me. I hoped she just thought I was trying my best to be especially sweet and loving. Monday evening at 5:30 a.m. Kelsey returned home around 5:15 and changed her clothes while I set the table and laid out the food. I poured a couple of glasses of wine and was sitting at the table when she appeared. She took a big sip from her glass and we passed the food back and forth. We were making small talk while we were eating and she didn't seem to have the slightest idea what was going to happen. What does the rest of your week look like? I asked when our meal was over and we were both just getting our favorite dishes on our plates. Quite freely, did you want to plan something? What is it? She asked, looking at me sideways. No, I thought you might want to take a week off after we chat, I said in a monotone voice, trying to keep any emotion out of my voice. Why would I do that? I know, Kels. I began, putting the envelope on the table in front of her. She just looked at it and then looked at me again, taking a sip of wine. I know about Jason and that you plan to file for divorce. She coughed slightly, choking on her wine, and looked at me blankly. I could see the gears working in her head, trying to figure out how I knew and what she could do to slow me down. What kind of divorce? She finally gasped. The one you're meeting with the lawyer about next week, and the one that Jason has already filed against Shannon. I know you're in love with him and you're planning to take Kate and leave me. I opened the bag for her and pushed some photos towards her. Her eyes widened. She put down her glass, took the photos, and looked through them. I saw her eyes get wet and she started to hiccup a little, as it happens when she is too emotional. I'm so sorry, Matthew. I never wanted this to happen. I do not know what else to say. She paused, looking at the table. I know, Kels, I've known about your plans for months. I've had time to come to terms with all this a little bit. I'm very disappointed in you, and it hurts me a lot. I held my breath for a moment to regain my confidence and control my rising anger. The only thing I want to know is this. Did I or didn't I do something that brought you to Jason? Oh my God, no, she exclaimed, looking into my eyes for a second and then retreated to the table. I think out of guilt and shame. It just so happened you haven't done it yet. You didn't do anything to drive me away. You were a wonderful husband and father. I just fell in love with him. She finally blurted it out. I was both disappointed and relieved. I guess there's nothing I can do if she just stopped loving me and decided to take Jason. He had plenty of time to get into her heart and push me out, and now there was nothing I could do to prevent it. Our marriage was dead, and all that was left was paperwork. I pulled out the terms of the divorce and handed it to her. Here is the agreement that I propose. I've already applied, so you don't have to do it if you agree with what I'm asking. The main points are as follows. The prenup is valid, so my trust is out of the question. I suggest we sell everything we don't need and split it 50-50. This, of course, includes the house. Since I applied first, I am asking for full custody of Caitlin and minimal child support. Of course, you will have a very free schedule of visits. I'll keep her on my insurance, but of course you'll need to get your own. You keep your 401k and all the investments you had in your marriage, as well as the inheritance you received from your mom. I wouldn't want to take anything really yours away from you. We will split all the investments that we started as a couple. Kate and I will stay in the house until we sell it. I am also allocating $200,000 from my trust so that you can get settled. I would recommend that you sign a prenup and protect him if you get back together with Jason as planned. I don't want you to lose anything. I want to make sure that you can be self-sufficient and independent, since I'm not asking for any spousal support. I stopped to watch her absorb what I had just posted for her. I think I should take Caitlin. The girl will need her mother when she grows up, she said decisively. I totally agree, but you can do it remotely with visits and calls. To be honest, I don't trust Jason with our daughter. I already know that he plans to try to turn her away from me with gifts and his courteous nature. Since he could not give birth to his own child, he wants mine. And I think I'm more than generous in letting him have my wife already. But he won't get my daughter. I understand that you will want to discuss the custody part. I suggest that lawyers earn their living and try to be polite. I submitted this as a peace offering when I saw her face turn red while discussing Kate and Jason. He would never hurt her, and that would depend on you. Separating her from her mother is a good way to do it. Well, anyway, she's staying with me until we figure something else out. You can stay here in the master bedroom for a few nights or a week until you figure it out. Kelsey, I still love you with all my heart. I thought we'd conquer the world together. But you're killing me here, and I don't know what else to do. My world is falling apart, and I'm trying my best to be fair and kind. I really don't want to hurt you the way you hurt me. Trust me, however, if you go nuclear or let Jason interfere in our affairs, I will respond in kind. And dear, I have resources that none of you have. My tone changed, and she could finally hear the anger in my words. I can play hardball if I'm forced to. She's seen it before. So please, let's put this on a slow fire and let the lawyers figure it out. I would really like to be polite and courteous to you anytime we meet. I feel it will be important for Caitlin to see us being sociable. I plan for both of us to be deeply involved in our daughter's life. I begged her. I really didn't want this to be a prolonged knockdown fight. I'm free until the end of the week, and by law you have to be officially served, which is scheduled here at the house at 9 a.m. I didn't want you to be embarrassed at work, so you might consider calling and taking a few days off too. I know it's going to be hard for both of us to be at home, but I thought we'd sit down with Caitlin tomorrow night or leave her at home on Wednesday to explain what's going on. Thoughts? Kelsey had already stopped eating and looked a little pale and sickly. I think that all the consequences of her actions have finally reached her. She could only blame herself. I was fat, dumb and happy until she let out this shitty storm. She looked at me, pretended to be a fish pulled out of the water, and then said, "All right, Matt. You obviously planned well and got ahead of us, I'm not sure how. But you did it. I'll call work first thing and at least be home until Wednesday. Do you think Alex will be able to leave her tomorrow night? Maybe I should just keep her out of school tomorrow and bring her home on Wednesday morning so we can talk." My private investigator, Larry, found out about everything after I got some hints that something was wrong in Denmark. "I'll call Aunt Alex right away. I think it's a great idea." Kelsey gave me a little nod when I mentioned Larry while she was collecting papers. I answered her and wished her good night. I guess she needed some time alone to think about what had happened and watched as she headed to the master bedroom, where she closed and locked the door, which was not a problem since I had already moved most of my daily clothes and needs to the spare room. I called my aunt and explained that we had a small family issue that we were working on, and of course she agreed to leave Caitlin for one more night and drop her off on Wednesday morning. I also talked to Caitlin and made it clear to her that she wouldn't go to school the next day. She was confused but didn't mind. I told her that my mom and I would explain everything on Wednesday. As I was putting things away and getting ready for bed, I could hear Kelsey mumbling through the door as if she was on the phone, and later quiet sobs as she mourned the loss of our marriage. Tuesday. I heard that Kelsey got up early and was making plans for her job when she came downstairs in casual clothes. At 9 o'clock sharp, she opened the door and officially accepted her package, minus the photos and transcripts. She met them last night in her room. Right after that, she grabbed her keys and purse and left. She didn't say where, but I figured it was to meet with Jason, her lawyer, or someone else who could sympathize. Later in the day, Bill called me to tell me that both Jason and their companies had filed our claims. It also turned out that Jason was countersued by Shannon around the same time. Bill stressed that I should probably stay alert and be attentive. Obviously, some threats against me from Jason were mentioned. I never thought Jason would be too stupid since he got everything he wanted. But just in case, I went to the gun safe and pulled out my .45 ACP, made sure it was loaded, cocked and locked, and put it on a chair while I watched TV. I was standing at the sink a few hours later when I saw a black BMW pull up in my driveway, and an enraged Jason jumped out and opened the back door, pulling out a baseball bat. I decided that I'd better go back to my chair where my cell phone was and call 911. Knowing that the door was locked, I felt safe. I dialed 911 and told the operator that my wife's boyfriend was in my driveway with a baseball bat. They sent several units in my direction. Just at that time, I heard a second car pull up outside. Judging by the screams and the tone of voices I heard, it was Kelsey. Then there was a high-pitched squeal. I jumped when my front door split open from a heavy blow, and an enraged Jason stormed inside, screaming at the top of his lungs, "You bastard! You got me fired and ruined my divorce." He was boiling and foaming at the mouth. I put my right hand on the butt of the gun. The feeling of it calmed me down. Jason was swinging the bat wildly, and I could hear Kelsey screaming outside, begging him to come back. "I took your wife, and now I'm going to kill you and take your daughter too." I let him walk another 5 feet before I pulled out my gun. His eyes were squinted, and it could be said that his judgment was inadequate. His bat was raised above his head, but it could hardly be effective at a distance of 25 feet. The crack of the bullet in the chamber was deafening. The first bullet entered a couple of inches below the sternum, the xiphoid process, and to the right of it. The bullet grazed a rib when it entered the liver and exited somewhere in the back. I was always taught to hit my targets 3 times, and practicing my instincts, the second shot went off a fraction of a second after the first. The second round hit the target, hitting the center of the sternum and a couple of fingers above the xiphoid process this time. I realized that I had hit the target. The bullet pierced his sternum and heart. Jason slowed down, and I think it was just momentum that made him take the next awkward step, and he was already falling when the third round came out of the barrel. I caught some movement at the door, but I was too focused on my task to pay attention to it. The last bullet entered Jason's half-open mouth, baring his teeth, and exited at the base of the skull. If Jason wasn't dead after 2 bullets, the third one severed his brainstem, certifying that the job was done. The bullet flew through and stuck in the splintered front door, narrowly missing Kelsey's head. She did not escape unscathed. Kelsey was splattered with her lover's skull and brains, which got into her screaming mouth. Jason's body fell to his knees and then landed hard on his stomach. Now I could hear the screams through the ringing in my ears. and I was surprised at how loud the gun was in the immediate vicinity. I started to hear sirens and the shouts of responding officers. Not knowing how extreme the situation was, they put Kelsey on her stomach and handcuffed her in front of the open door. Her screams and screams did not decrease until she began to vomit when she tasted what she was covered with. I was shocked by the events that unfolded in front of me, and finally focused on the gun pointed at my face and the screaming officer. "Stand still. Drop the gun," he ordered, and I came to my senses a little, dropping the weapon, and followed his command to lie down on the blood-spattered floor. The epilogue. The next 2 weeks were hectic and overwhelming. Jason was pronounced dead at the scene. I later learned from police reports and eyewitness accounts that he apparently received my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from his wife at the same time. It didn't take him long to realize that the photos came from me. Kelsey was standing next to him when he opened the envelope from his wife and confirmed that she also had a set of these photos. A few moments later, they were both summoned to the vice president's office, where they confessed to their affair, not understanding what the result would be. Knowing that my lawsuit against the company would not go away, the managers found it necessary to dismiss the managing director for having an affair with a subordinate, which they did. At that moment, I became the personification of evil for Jason, and he felt that I needed to pay for standing up to him and destroying his well-thought-out plans. Grabbing one of his souvenir bits from his office, he decided to come to my house. Kelsey saw him through the window of the conference room on the second floor and guessed where he might be going. She caught up with him in our driveway and tried to calm him down before he hurt me. Of course, none of them knew that I had been warned in advance of their arrival and was ready. Kelsey got a black eye. Jason hit her when she tried to stop him from entering. Other than that, she didn't suffer any other injuries, but she had nightmares for several months. I've talked to her once or twice between police interrogations, prosecutors, and courtroom visits, but we've never had a serious conversation about what happened in our house. Kelsey became a shell of her former self. The loss of her husband, lover, and daughter in less than 24 hours did it. She never recovered. Kelsey stayed in touch during the divorce and possibly for another month after it was finalized. She didn't even hire a lawyer or dispute the divorce. I easily won custody of Caitlin. To my great surprise, she never accepted her part of the financial agreement. Bill kept it for her, but eventually returned it to me a year later. She also never returned to our house and stayed with her family until she disappeared. She had several supervised visits with Caitlin, but they were awkward or unsuccessful. I made sure that Caitlin was available for every scheduled visit. Regardless of whether we had confirmation from Kelsey or not, she showed up about every fourth visit. I was told that Kelsey was addicted to painkillers and other illegal substances that were prescribed to calm her down and help her become psychologically fit. By the time she disappeared, she was unemployed, friendless, and penniless. Neither Caitlin, nor I, nor anyone she knew had any contact information, and we never heard from her again. We have no idea what happened to her. We lost our wife and mother. The house was sold. Caitlin and I bought another house in her school district and tried to fix our lives. We both saw counselors after this traumatic event. I did for 6 months, but in the end, I just had to bury the pain and move on. I had a daughter to raise, as well as a life to lead. Caitlin spent several years with a counselor from time to time, partly due to the reaction to the divorce and Kelsey's disappearance. Caitlin had a lot of psychological problems to solve. It took me 3 years to recover enough to even think about dating. A few months later, I met a wonderful woman named Jo, who was understanding and respectful of my experience with Caitlin. We dated much longer and slower than either of us wanted, but eventually moved on to a physical relationship and got married about 16 months later. Jo and I raised Caitlin as our daughter, but we never expanded the family. Our lives stabilized and improved over time. Our only problems were related to the main events in Caitlin's life, her graduation from high school and college. I hired Larry several times to try to find Kelsey, but every lead led to a dead end. The general consensus was that she must have died somewhere alone and debauched. It was a terrible experience, but we did our best and moved on. I was glad that I had time to make a plan of action and find the right people to execute it accordingly.